Hello, happy Future Friday. I'm so excited to have you here, Janine. You have become a fast friend and have just been such a visionary in building intentional future communities, which I can't wait to dive into with this concept you've been working on with Vitalik and others called Zuzalu, but also your past from Gitcoin grants and just really driving the platform, but also the community there. And then just where you even started from Deloitte Pixel to strategy consulting in a much more traditional space. So it's been obviously a really cool evolution. I can't wait to share it today. So you kick us off, where are you calling in from today and what are you focused on these days?
I'm calling in from France. I'm in a small mountain town for the summer, but I am normally in Austin, Texas. Zuzalu is this new concept in pop-up communities and sort of intentional community spaces, as well as diving into this idea of like coordinations and network states. Essentially, we ran our first experiment in Montenegro this past March till May. It was awesome having you there. And the focus was on how could we just run an experiment of bringing together at least 200 people, so just above Dunbar's number, that were interested in some of the same topics, from core Ethereum development to ZK technology, philosophy, longevity, and health. So bringing together a couple of different interest areas, both on the health side and like future projects in health around longevity, as well as sort of like new initiatives and ideas on the core Ethereum and ZK tech side. And that cross-pollination over this 2-month period was going in just an experiment, like, let's see what comes out of it. And coming out of it was this like deep sense of there is value in bringing together people that have shared values, that are trying to be curious, trying to drive personal growth and collective growth, and being able to pull together the collective intelligence and just energy in a space to drive and accelerate progress in technology, science, health, social innovation was amazing. And that's the direction that we're trying to sort of hone in with the future of Zuzalu and where we go. I definitely got this weird passion for IRL communities. Gitcoin, I have been focused on the public goods funding workstream. Sort of my real love and passion there and bringing that team together has been focused on how can we use different mechanisms around funding what really matters to communities to push funding to the edges in some creative way. And Gitcoin, I think, does that better than anyone else in the crypto space, using quadratic funding. And I just think that's a fascinating mechanism to give and empower a community to decide what their shared needs are and where they should be funding different projects. I also just like love running community projects and community events. So with Gitcoin, I ran a Gitcoin community gathering earlier this year. That was sort of a weekend event that was super fun and truly focused on how can you take people out of their day-to-days to create magical environments that make them think differently and feel comfortable with the people that they're with, to really spur and sort of catalyze connection in a creative way. And then I've been really focused on building a intentional community in Austin, where we have about 40 people living within a 5-minute radius of one another. And the just collective energy and projects and, the idea of actually knowing your neighbors has come to fruition in a way that's super exciting for our generation, where you don't necessarily feel that if you're typically moving to a top tier city where you're focused on building a new project or meeting a few people here or there, but day to day having the convenience of everyone at your doorstep that you want to be spending time with doesn't really happen.
I love this. And I can't wait to dive into this a little bit more, but your background really connects to this too, right? I think spending time at Deloitte and even building out their talent function, it's always been about people and how people come together in your world. How did you go from Deloitte to then being in this Web3 blockchain space? And it's, I think, sometimes hard to imagine, like, what does that look like when you're thinking about community and IRL, and like maybe that isn't intuitive to some people, that blockchain has a really massive IRL component and why that's important. So how did you get into this space, and how does it connect to that vision you have?
I think so few people understand how ingrained community and connection is in the Ethereum DNA and in sort of the like blockchain DNA. It was something I didn't even understand. So kind of backtrack. I was in consulting, a massive, corporate consulting job, which was not something that I necessarily wanted to go into. I was an art major in college, as well as a geography major where I focused on people and place. So I focused on human geography, and then economics. And coming out of college, I really wanted to have a secure visa because I had some issues going into my senior year where an internship I just couldn't end up doing because of my visa. And I didn't want to be in a situation where I had to deal with that again. And I wanted to get to freedom in the US as fast as possible. So joining a larger corporate consulting firm was one of the ways to do that. And I actually found this amazing niche there where I helped build out their crowdsourcing function first, which was Deloitte Pixel, where we gathered insights from hundreds of different people. And that's where I saw the like collective just value of large scale human coordination to get insights in an interesting way. And that sort of spurred this idea of like, what are the incentives models to bring collectives together to do things in ways that like they wouldn't otherwise, or give information in ways they wouldn't otherwise. And that was the start. And then I worked in like, how do we create the on-demand talent function at Deloitte, and brought together 70 different freelance marketplaces where we sort of built like a meta platform for all marketplaces to bring together, or to allow Deloitte to hire people that were outside of their organization that had talents that they couldn't hire internally. And in doing that too, I was like, there are different structures for people to work. So paired together this idea of like coordination for incentive models with, there are different ways that people could organize in companies or in sharing their talents with the world. I started diving into this, crypto ecosystem, because those two things were, the incentive models were aligning in crypto to address that in a way where people could actually get rewarded for doing work differently or for providing insights in a collective. And then diving even further into it, when I look at community, and this is the part I get super excited about, when I look at community, there's not really an industry around it. Like you've got the Soho houses, you've got the YPOs where it's like, okay, we're giving you community, but you're paying for it. And then you've got the country clubs, and it's like you're paying for it on a membership basis. And it sort of becomes this weird, like you're in or you're out, and it's status driven. And there is a group that serves you versus a bottoms up community that's really strong because of everyone in the network. And I couldn't figure out like, what is the financial model around community and how do you monetize this? And in looking at just like what models were out there where communities are at a grassroots level participating and engaging and wanting to give back, the crypto ecosystem had that going on more than anyone else that I saw. And that really was the pivotal moment where I decided like I wanted to jump in. And even though I saw so much of that happening online, something I wanted to help bring to life was, how do we bring this learning that we have online and blockchain technology and in sort of what we're seeing in the Ethereum ecosystem into an IRL environment?
So the Twitter sphere and the crypto world has started to get obsessed with this concept of the network state, for better or worse. Some people love it, some people hate it, other people are trying to reinvent it. Could you just explain what is a network state, and how does that connect to some of the efforts around Zuzalu and the IRL connection that you're building?
So, first I'll start with Zuzalu was not necessarily going in saying like, let's test out a network state. It was going in saying, we haven't tested out a lot of like large scale human coordination, as well as connecting with local states or local territories to create something different. A network state, in sort of like a sentence, is a highly aligned online community with a capacity for collective action that like can crowdfund territory around the world and eventually gains like diplomatic recognition from different states. And we didn't necessarily start that way. We started with here's a one-page PDF. We hope you buy in. And no one connected online before. Kind of a week before was when everyone from Zuzalu started connecting online. And instead, what we kind of built was a IRL community first and a collective together that like built values as a group while they were IRL together, and then started sort of partnering with the state after of like, hey, there's some interesting stuff that we're doing here. And Montenegro was just like really excited about what we were doing. We had the prime minister come out. We had the new prime minister come out. We had the old prime minister come out. We spoke to the president, and they were all really excited about what we were building as a real life use case of this concept of, the network state community, where it's like people aligning and trying to create something different that the state can get on board with. But I would say it's not necessarily a network state. We're more sort of we were Zuzalu, the experiment that's friendly with the concept of network states, as well as coordinations and all of these different aspects.
So fascinating and so interesting to think about how you're bringing together the ecosystem. One of the examples that came to mind for me was just as I was learning about network states and coordinations, it's like the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church has actually been the best and most successful financial and community-wise example of like a network state, of having physical places and locations and traditions and spaces to gather and connecting with local governments, to have certain rights, especially within the Vatican. I'm curious, what do you feel like is that next community? If it's no longer the church for many people, are you starting to see any things emerge that really stand out to you, like new models or even inspirational examples of communities that are starting to gather and build really strong in real life and digital membership bases that are not necessarily paying membership fees or otherwise?
Totally. I think this is fascinating to start thinking about, like, where are people finding connection and community? Because it is such a massive issue. Like, let's back up just kind of before we even dive into that. Like, why did we even, want to create this experiment? And something I look at, like, we've shifted so much over time from tribe-like living to isolation, with kind of just thinking like that's the norm, right? Like, we went from being in tribes to being further apart and wanting land so we could build our own farms and farm our crops so people only were with their families. Fast forward, you had the Industrial Revolution and people were leaving their families to go to work and totally isolated from their families. And then fast forward, we got to this place of this like grandeur of flexibility and freedom with remote work, where, you can do whatever you want. You can work from home. You can sit in your in your pajamas all day. And what we've sort of got to is some people not having an IRL conversation at any point in their day and sitting down the minute they wake up behind their computer, working on whatever projects they're working on and being like, whoa, it's now 10 p.m. It's time for bed. And it's driven this heightened sense of isolation. Like we are dealing with a isolation like epidemic across the board, and isolation and sort of like social isolation as a whole is not just a feeling, like it's affecting people's health and lifespan. It's it shows that like equivalent to really bad chronic diseases or smoking, like its death rates are being, or people's lifespan are decreasing based on being isolated. And something like over the age of 45, we've got a quarter of the population feeling lonely. And over the age of 65, you have a third of people feeling socially isolated. Like we're building a world where people trend towards having no friends by the end of their lives. So I think going back to your question around religion and what's next, religion gave people like a sense of connection and a sense of purpose. And something I've been seeing is more people going back to religion recently. So a lot of friends that I never would have thought they would have, thought about being religious are questioning the idea of going back to religion for the community, for a sense of purpose, for shared values that they can follow. So on one end, I think you've got a whole group of people exiting religion and not understanding what's next. And you're seeing many of those people dive down sort of the spirituality track as a whole. I think Burning Man is a great example of a movement that has created probably some of the most like countercultural, community-focused grassroots initiatives. Something interesting there is Burning Man didn't write their like 10 principles until like 20 years in. So it sort of was this like grassroots effort fully for the first 20 years. And the only reason they wrote the principles was because there were these other events that were popping up that were calling themselves Burning Man, and they needed those events to align. So it wasn't even for the community. The community felt really aligned. So what I'm hoping is we'll see more of these grassroots initiatives around people convening, finding a shared purpose together, finding values that they're aligned on together, and building sort of tribe-like communities for themselves. Zuzalu is going to be one of those, but my hope is that there are many that emerge, that we can sort of create a network together that's stronger than just, our one Zuzalu event a year.
So what advice do you give to someone getting started? If somebody is listening to this right now and thinking about how they can actually activate their own tribe, their own community, what advice would you give them? What learnings or insights have you got from doing this?
That's such a great question. And I think it's so important to remember that it's scary building community. I think back to when I felt pretty isolated when I first moved to the US. When I was 18, I left just amazing friends in South Africa and this incredible community that I had built. I came and bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and was so confused by the culture that I was diving into, and really felt socially isolated for the first time in a long time. And I spent most of college like truly trying to understand the culture of the US and the culture of Dartmouth and where I was, and connecting with people. And what I started doing was like, I need to start with something small. So it was just hosting 4-person dinners to start. Like truly keep it small, start small, host a dinner, host a activity that you love doing with others, host an arts and crafts day, or create a meetup for startup founders, or create a meetup for people working on similar projects to you. Like start small, but find people that are values aligned with you, that you feel like over time you can start being vulnerable with, and build something with them. So that 4-person little connection might become each of you inviting one person to something 3 months down the line, and you having 8 people there, and finding 3 of those people out of the, additional 4 work really well from a values alignment standpoint. And then the next event that you have, you might have 16, but only 2 of those people align well. So then you're starting to build this smaller tribe. And by starting small and not expecting the world of yourself and being consistent, you'll start building a world of abundance in terms of the people that you're surrounding yourself by, and hopefully recognize the real excitement and passion and collective energy that can come from building community.
All right, and speed round, last question. What is your controversial opinion about the future? This is all about Future Fridays. When you think about where this is all going to go, what's something that you think you uniquely are starting to identify of what you think the future is going to look like?
I think the future is going to be a lot less online than it currently is. I think we've got this huge move to digital, and my opinion is we're going to go real in a real shift towards IRL. So I'm excited to hopefully see that and be a part of that movement.
I love that. Okay, well, how can we meet up with you IRL or follow the projects that you are creating in the world? Would love to keep in touch.
I'm actually doing an experiment for the first time. So again, so IRL focused that I'm much more of a lurker on Twitter than a poster, because I haven't wanted to spend my time even thinking about tweeting. But actually, thanks to you, Alana, I'm doing an entire series of a 60-day experiment of posting something about community building daily on Twitter. So you can follow me there at Janine Leger, and reach out on Telegram at Janine Leger. So look forward to hear from you.
Thank you so much for everything that you do in the world of community and belonging, and for joining us today and sharing all of your wisdom. I so appreciate you, and will definitely be following along.